Right, so a lot of these sort of performances can be characterized either as having a Muslim theme or a Muslim flavor, which come from the Bahasa Indonesia terms Kesenian Islami and Kesenian, respectively. So the former incorporates orthodox religious texts that are devotional and are usually devoid of any stage performance, whilst the latter incorporate secular texts and are usually more performative in nature, designed for entertainment, and only possess an aura of Islam. And this is the category into which Tari Radat falls into, Muslim flavor. In comparison to its Muslim-themed equivalent, Hadrah, which is, Hadrah has more of a Muslim theme because it's much more devotional and uses orthodox texts with an emphasis on recitation and worshipping the Prophet. Right, so now I'm going to move on to my transcription analysis. And this performance is in excess of 20-25 minutes and it's audio only. So what I've done is I've identified 4 core motifs, which I'm going to talk you through. And my transcriptions are of the resultant rhythms of the interlocking between drums. Because with these 6 drums that all sound similar, it's very hard to tell apart the individual drums. So just keep that in mind. These are resultant rhythms. Right, motif A constitutes the bulk of the piece, and that's the core motif is the first image over here. And the second image are a couple of variations. So this motif is constituted of a rhythmic cell that's made up of a quaver and 2 semiquavers filled with, the other beats are filled with quavers. And in the variations, this rhythmic cell jumps around to different beats of the duple meter. And this is the result of the interlocking. So let's listen to a short segment. There we go. So as you can hear, it's got quite a propelling motion throughout. And this motif is often introduced with a short syncopated passage, such as the one in the first image up here. And this is a variation in the second image. So sometimes you can hear as some instances of interlocking because of the relative sparseness of the musical texture. For example, here, the end of the second example. So that was an example of this syncopated introductory passage. Now, at several points, there are rhythmic breaks in the propulsion of the motif. For example, in the first example, after a short break, the drums reconvene and resume. But sometimes, such as in the second example, there's a little bit of rhythmic displacement of this core rhythmic cell of the motif, the quaver and 2 semiquavers. So for example, where it's on the first and third beats predominantly in the first example, the second example, after the break, there's a displacement. The cell finds itself on the second beat of the duple meter before the initial motif resumes. And this is just an illustration. So at the very beginning, you could hear some brief breaks. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about. Now, motif B, the second motif, is what I call a filler motif. So it intersperses long periods of singing. And the first image is, well, the motif, and the second image is just a subtle variation. There we go. So that was the filler motif. Moving on. Motif C, the third motif, is substantially different in its rhythmic makeup. So the first example is the motif, and the second example are some variations. And when I first listened to it, it reminded me almost of a tango. And pay attention to the first variation over here, because we're going to be speaking about that a little more later. Yes, so as you can hear, the tempo is slower and the texture is less dense. The final motif is devoid of any rhythmic movement. Quite simply, it's a frame drum roll, sometimes interspersed with just singing, sometimes like a vocal break, sometimes there isn't one. And as you could hear, there might be a potential correlation with the strong, powerful chanting of the text, but more research is needed into the textual elements of that. This presentation just focuses on the rhythm. So now let's move on to comparing some of these transcriptions with related musical genres to see if there's a link between religion and rhythm.
Just to interject there briefly, Rohan, there's 5 minutes left.
5 minutes.
5 minit lagi sampai 20 menit, ya.
Thank you. So if we were to look at seeing if there's a Shia Islamic influence, one of the main sources is regular Qureshi's transcription of poetic meters from the Iranian influenced Indian chanting genre Majlis. And I have just picked two of these meters for comparison. I picked the first one because it incorporates rhythmic syncopation and it has quaver movement. However, it is very different in its makeup compared to any of the motifs, especially motif A that we discussed earlier, as this incorporates many long notes, which the Terbang version doesn't. However, moving on to the Nauha wedding song musical meter, this looks quite similar to motif C, what I thought was a tango motif, motif C. However, it is syncopated in a way here that omits the first beat, which is usually played by the terbang in Tari Rada. So there might be a connection, but let's just keep that in mind and move on. So if we were to look for any Sunni Islamic or Sufi rhythmic influence, we can take a brief look at three genres from Aceh. So the first one is Amir's transcription of the La Ilala motif from a Sudati Achenese sitting song. And as you can see, the first bar of this transcription has the same dotted motif as the first variation of motif C in the Tari Rada Terbangan. And you also see this in Kartomi's transcription of a lullaby from Aceh in the first and to some extent the second bars. And this lullaby features lyrics that praise Allah. So there might be a rhythmic and religious connection over here, as both of these examples incorporate a text, the praise text, and it features a motif C in Tari Radat. So moving on, the final example is Herwarth's transcription of Rapai rhythms. Now, they look very similar on paper to motif A of the Tari Radat. However, we can't always rely on what's written down. Let's listen to a little bit of Rapai. As you can hear, there's some really obvious call and response techniques between the drums in this recording, which is completely different from Tari Radat, which incorporates more of a much more interlocking between drums. Okay, moving on to listen to some Dol Tasa. Again, there's a little bit of call and response at the very beginning. However, as the recording progresses, the drums are mainly playing in unison, and there's some subtle rhythmic changes emphasized now and again. And the final recording. Now, in this recording of Dabus music, it has a very different rhythmic vibe to it. The rhythm is much more linear. And this makes sense because within the context of Dabus, this sort of music is for trance rather than for showcasing virtuosity. So in conclusion, the rhythms of themselves of Tari Radat Terbanggana, unlike any of the other examples from Sumatra, nor like any examples of rhythm connected to Islam. The emphasis is placed primarily on performativity and virtuosity, combined with the theatrical choreography of the dance. This gives Tari Radat more of a Muslim flavor than theme. As such, no strong links can be made between religion and rhythm, except for a few occasional occurrences, such as the La Ilaha Illallah motif and motif C. However, the correlation with text is an avenue for further research in this regard. Now, being able to dissect indigenous rhythms in and of itself is going to be very difficult in the multicultural syncretized landscape of Lampung. However, the fact that none of these rhythms can be explicitly connected to a great degree to any examples of other Islamic forms suggests that the rhythm most likely constitutes indigenous origins. This demonstrates the integration of traditional music and indigenous cultures within a wider religious context in Lampung. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rohan. Karen, if you're there, I don't know if I can get everybody on the same screen or not. I don't know if you're there. Well, I have some questions, but I won't go up first. Margaret, please go ahead. Kalau mencampurkan bahasa silakan ya, karena kasihan yang berbahasa Indonesia. Sorry, Margaret.
Me, Richter.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Rohan, I think you've actually convinced me that there's no definite Islamic influence. It's a virtuoso art form, and it concurs with my experience too, that in a virtuoso art form, you use local rhythms and you don't use established rhythms from elsewhere. You try to vary it. So there's a lot of variation in the different performances of this Tari Adat. But I'm wondering about you as a young man with a sporty background, etc. What do you think about those virtuoso movements of the men in row facing the frame drummers. Is that, it seems to me, it's virtually impossible. I can't possibly do those movements, especially leaning back and standing, starting on a kneeling position, then leaning back gradually, and then right back, and then doing things with your hands, and then coming forward again, and then going straight on. No problems at all with their movements. And then they're kneeling and they're walking along on their knees. Is that strenuous from your point of view? How can they actually do that? I mean, I know they're virtuoso dancers, but it seems quite incredible to me what they're doing. And they are virtuosos, so they're improvising as they go. Every performance is kind of different, and the musicians also, they're different every time. So it stands to reason they're not using established religious rhythms and so on, as you argued.
Yeah, so I mean, some of the movements you mentioned would be a little taxing, especially the one where you're kneeling but then reclining all the way back.
Yeah, how do you do that?
I mean, I've tried doing that when I do yoga, and it takes a little bit of practice to stay down there for a long time. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you've grown up flexible, getting used to doing it, it might come more naturally. But it would be taxing. What I had in mind was the drummers moving with their drums, because if the terbang themselves are as heavy as you said they are in your field notes, then I mean, doing theatrics with that while still being rhythmically accurate, in my opinion, would be quite difficult.
Yeah. Thank you.
We have a question from Arlene, who's the sound lost its voice. So firstly, thanks very much, Rohan, for a great paper. And it shows the continuing value of transcription. Secondly, the question to you is about dance and how much you feel you should take that into account when you're analysing the music, the rhythms and so on.
Yes, I think that's very important, actually. The recording I was studying was an audio recording, so unfortunately I couldn't see the resemblance to dance in this particular version. But I believe looking at the dance would be especially useful to gauge the variations of the motifs I discussed. For example, when I was listening to, let's say, motif A, for example, I found that rhythmic cell jumping around all the beats. However, I couldn't really see a pattern there, which is why I just said, oh, it's a variation of this primary motif. But perhaps if I were to have looked at a dance, that might have been, there would have been more of a connection there. So yeah, definitely something for me to look into more.
Rania.
Yeah,
Rania.
I was listening. Thank you. Thanks for your talk. Very interesting. I noticed that in your Lampung examples, the rhythm of the drums seems to be independent to the rhythm of the singing. Now, is that always the case?
So where I mentioned singing, so if you were to take motif D as an example, the frame drum roll, I would say that's just free rhythm in the, well, relatively free rhythm for the vocalists. But I've got to be honest, I didn't pay attention to the rhythms of the singers. I don't think they fit precisely within the duple meter. They were more of a kind of just soaring above the drums.
Right.
And I think that was important because of how loud the drums are to be heard. You've kind of got to maybe go a little off bound. You know what I'm saying?
Now, the reason I asked that question was if there was a similarity, then you could actually connect the drums to Islam if they were singing Islamic material, if the rhythm of the song was similar. You know, that's just a thought.
Yeah, I guess to some extent, because it's Muslim flavored, you could always contextualize the music within an Islamic context, but it's just the rhythms of the terbang themselves which I didn't find convincingly fit any other Islamic genre.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks, Rohan. We better finish there. And so thank you very much. That's
great.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
So you had some good questions about movement and dance and text in relation to your rhythms. Just before we begin the next one, I can't see everybody on the screen. So kalau ada pertanyaan, silakan dalam chatting. But also, if you want to ask a question, just let me know in the chat. So at the end of the presentation, I know you want to ask a question. So thanks very much for that. The next one will go into Hadrah, which has already come up quite a bit in the first session. So I'll pass over to you, silakan Rayhan Sudrajat.
Thanks, Max. And hi, everyone. Good to see you in this conference, which is Ibu Margaret. How are you, Bu? Okay, I'll put my share screen first. Okay. Is anyone can see the screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Rayhan Sudrajat. So I'm a research master graduate from Monash University and ethnomusicology. Graduate 2020 last year, November. And today I would like to discuss about the establishment of Hadrah music from the 70s to the present Liwa Sekala Beghak. So actually, we know that Lampung has one of the richest and most varied music and dance cultures globally. We know its shape, clothes are like a kain tapis, like one near my virtual background, where we can find in the museum and every places. It's quite well known of the fabrics, and also not to mention the traditional music and many coastal pesisir of the Saibatin. You can see the map of the ethnic groups here. We have the large maps on the left here. We have a Sumatra Island here, and we have the enlarged map of the Lampung. We have the ethnic groups such as Abung, and then the bigger Lampung. And then we have the Kubu and Komering and Musihilo. This is not quite accurate, of course, because we have to also look up with the actual data in the field. But this is actually nice to bring the understanding of how the people situated and look at it in that. Sorry. And many coastal here, such as in Pesisir, and we have also known about the Saibatin, like Ibu Margaret and Rohan also explained about the inland people called Abung and Pubian, or known as the Pepadun. And but however, there's one Saibatin descent group called the Melinting live in the inland areas. And the people have played a significant role in the structure and style of their ceremonies and know the 5 fundamental transitional life stages in Lampung person's lifetime, such as Ibu Margaret already mentioned, like from womb to birth and adolescence, such as reaching a marriage age, marriage, and then achieving rank, and then finding death. So this is to bring the bigger background and the introduction. So in Lampung, there are 2 dialects called Api, which is vowel A, and Lampung Nyo, or old language. So dialect A associated with Saibatin groups of clans, but however, there is a 3rd important language spoken in the northern Lampung and southern, which is Komering. You can see here in the center of Lampung, we have the green one here, in the center, which is Komering, that represents Api as well. So they have 2 primary social levels of interaction, such as Bahasa Dalom or High Lampung, which is spoken mainly by descendants of the former aristocracy, and then Bahasa Rama or Low Lampung, which is used for the pergaulan or discussion, like a formal, informal discussion. And then we have Here the map from the Google Earth about the Sekala Beghak, which is in the northern of Lampung. Here we have the Pasar Liwa, or known as the Liwa area here. So in the Dutch colonial era from around 1811 till 1945, the Saibatin people, or one leader known as the Pimigiri or coastal people, live around the Sekala Beghak uplands and the Melinting Rajabasa here. But today, most Lampung people are Muslims, but their ceremonial art stems mainly from the Hindu-Buddhist era, which dates from earlier CE to the 19th century CE. And the ancient Lampung region is interwoven with Hinduism, Buddhism, and island aspects. It includes components of the mythological views of the two prehistoric migration to Sekala Beghak. One is the Austronesian view of the holy marriage of heaven and earth, and also the Dongsang culture view of the sacred struggle between the upper, middle, and lower worlds. And some of areas of coastal Lampungs may have been converted to Islam from the 19th century, and inlands area from the 18th or 19th century. But the performance of some pre-Muslim genre remained indispensable at most traditional life events ceremonies today, with the all-male artists often performing Muslim Hadrah songs of praise with the frame drum playing after the main celebrations are over. So we can see here in the map is in the northern of the Lampung, is the Liwa area. So this is a photo taken by Ibu Margaret Kartomi, and Rohan also mentioned about this, like how they can lean back to the performance like this. And then for this one in Sekala Beghak, according to legend, some proselytizers came from the nearby Banten Sultanate, which ruled Lampung and tried to counter its paper trade from the mid-19th to mid-18th century, while others came from West Sumatra, Pagar Uyung to the Sekala Beghak kingdom. So this is actually explained why there are quite a few similarities between the people from the Lamandau people in Central Kalimantan. They have the similar, like the gong ensemble also because back in the past, the people from Lamandau said that their descendants coming from Pagar Uyung kingdom and back to the Lamandau people in Central Kalimantan. So this is only to bring about the connection with the Central Kalimantan. So, and then amongst the most distinctive of Muslim in Sekala Beghak is athletic form of Hadrah singing and dancing with the frame drum playing. We can see that this is the man playing the frame drums and rebana, and also they lean back with the performance. And the performing arts of pre-Muslims origin with some Islamic elements added continue to provide significant meaning, especially for celebration. The men usually sing devotional group Muslim songs, which is called Hadrah, and Pa Hashim can also explain about that, which is quite comprehensive about the meaning of the Hadrah and how is it originated etymologically. And especially for celebration, the men usually sing devotional group Muslims and the frame drum accompaniment from the duration of day or night, with the woman providing refreshment. So this is only occasional, not only provide the refreshment, but also they also can play, which is I will explain, and also present about the audio recordings in a second. And there is no clarity about where the art of Hadrah in Indonesia comes from, especially including in Lampung, but the word, especially the Hadrah, such as the Hadrah Maut, Hashim Khan's already explained, and then associated with the Islamics, Kesenian Islami, which is already discussed, and the Islamic festivals, and also it can be held in the festival where in Lampung, people play Hadrah when they have the festival, wedding ceremony, and it's quite common to play Hadrah in the welcoming the guests or before the wedding starts. And the most possible is tracing from where Islam came to the region and is acceptable to Lampung society. So there are three possibilities. The first is from Banten since 15th century, and the second is from Minangkabau when Pagar Uyung converted to Islam, and the third is from the Sultanate of Palembang, which is this is actually the tracing from Islam come from. And then we can see from the picture here, Hadrah music is also accompanied by the rebana, or we know that the frame drums and the lute or gambus, or kind of oud-like, and they usually play together with the music with the singing vocal. You can see also the Bapak here will be singing about the reciting in Arabic or Indonesian languages. And there are two types of Hadrah. So the first is Hadrah Lama, or we know that as a classical Hadrah, and Hadrah Baru, or newly created Hadrah. So presentation are often interspersed with the solo vocalist singing devotional or secular lyrics, accompanied by the Arab associated gambusan ensemble, which include gambus and melodic leader, two pairs of small double-headed high-pitched drums called marawis for plural and singular marwis, an optional violin and harmonica, which is not obligatory for the performance. And other popular Muslim art forms include the singing of Muslim or secular lyrics performed in sitting position and interspersed with Malay joget style couples of line dancing. So here's the performance of the Sanggar Seni Budaya Lampung, Angon Saka by Bapak Syarifuddin Iskandar, Gelar Raja Bangsawan, recorded in 10 December 2011. Thank you, Ibu Margaret Kartomi, for providing the video. So this is only a short to bring the understanding about the Hadrah Lama. So we can discuss later about the characteristic of the Hadrah Lama and Hadrah Baru.
We don't have sound, I think, is that right?
Yeah, I think he had to link it up with the beginning.
That's sorry?
He didn't link it up with the beginning with the technicians. That's why we can't hear it.
Oh, you can hear the...
Yeah.
I think you were supposed to link it up.
Maybe try resharing your screen, but click the little box which says enable sound before you click share.
Let me new share. Let's see. Can you hear it now?
No.
No. Okay, let me stop sharing first and then share screen with share sound. Okay, sorry for that. Thanks, Rohan, for mentioning that. You can hear it now, yeah? Can you hear it? Okay, yes. Sorry for that. Sorry for the inconvenience. Start from the beginning. Yep, this is the Hadrah Lama. Okay, from the beginning, eh? Okay, so that's the Hadrah Lama, which is a classical Hadrah. I will discuss that about the comparison with the Hadrah Baru, which is here.
Di sini menjunjung cinta kebudayaan. Pernahkah engkau genggam begini pikiran saya, di laut kau ku selam, di darat kau ku bela.
Okay, so that's the Hadrah Baru and Hadrah Lama. So this is the tadi Bandar, just a little bit about the Hadrah music as well. Right, so in Hadrah Baru and Hadrah Lama, so Hadrah Lama is mostly using the Arabic and also strict with the lyrics, which is written in the book from Arabic lyrics, which Hadrah Baru is quite more flexible. They can use the pantun, which is known as quatrain, and also use the Bahasa Indonesia, and also they're more flexible and also and can use to to create a new form of the musical art forms of the Qasidah Islami through Hadrah music. And that's for the Hadrah Lama and Hadrah Baru, which is in the Liwa area. For this one, for the comparison, so I went to Tanjung Kerta in Pesawaran in the 2015, and I was invited by my cousin to they have a wedding there, and they play the Hadrah there. So this is the audio recordings from the Hadrah, which is there are two welcoming the guests and also welcoming the braids of the weddings. So
Rayhan, sorry to interrupt. There's about 5 minutes left before you're at 20 minutes, just to let you know.
Okay, thank you, Max. Right, so I'm going to speed it up. So there's no photo or a video for this one because my hard drive was quite a bad sector and not quite readable. So this is only the audio. Sorry for that. So that's the actual of the welcoming the guest and bride into the wedding festival, and they usually have the people lining up and the ibu-ibu and also the woman groups playing the rebana with the playing of the Hadrah. And now is the wedding feast ceremony. They have the people reciting the Arabs lyrics first. So you can hear that the transition from the reciting the lyrics in Arabic, and then they said silakan masuk, and then they start with the playing rebana, and they were coming into the wedding festival ceremony. So this is actually the form in the around. They're also the people of the Saibatin in the Tanjung Kerta village, and also my cousins also one part of the people who live around the coastal area in the western part of the Lampung. And
Rayhan, sorry, that's time there. So if you want a minute or two to give a summary, you can. Otherwise, we'll go straight to questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Max. Yep, so summary and conclusion here, Hadrah chorus singing of devotional text by man and woman accompanying himself on a rebana or gambus, and various form of the Rebana dances. And Hadrah music has developed since 1970, showed by the newly created pieces from artists and musicians in Lampung. And Hadrah music is not only part of Islamic art, and argued also unique local Lampung music traditional from Sekala Beghak era, which has happened from the past until now. So I think that's it from me, and thanks everyone.
Thank you very much. It's fascinating, Rayhan. Just to reiterate to people, if you want to ask a question, kalau ada pertanyaan, silakan masukkan ke chatting dulu supaya saya tahu ya. And many of you, I'm sure, have questions who haven't asked questions yet, and those who have already, more from you is great as well. But we do have one from Rayhan, if I'm not mistaken. Silakan, Rayhan.
Halo Mas Rian. Sehat Mas.
The next question is, is there a special need why it is necessary to make a new version Hadrah, and yeah, why did they necessary to converting the classic into the modern one, and is the classic Hadrah is still used in the traditional ceremony, or both of them is flexible in using in ritual adat or something? Thank you. That is my question.
Thank you, Mas Rian. Interesting questions. So actually, what makes the first questions about what makes the difference between the Hadrah Lama or classical Hadrah and Hadrah baru newly created. So as far as I understood, the Hadrah Lama especially menekankan before around the 70s, sorry, and about that they're using the the lyrics from the Arabic, and also they have quite strict with the books as far as understood. Maybe Bu Margaret later can add. And also the Hadrah Baru is newly created because they also quite flexible and they can be used in the, not only in ritual adat, but also they can use in especially like a pesta, pernikahan, or maybe other ritual adat, which is not being used with the newly created Hadrah. So actually, the differences between them is actually the classical is a bit more strict, and they have the regulation like a borders between the which one can be created, or maybe into creation, or maybe into the new one, into the more flexible one. And the second question is about the, does it necessary to have the newly created Hadrah like in the future? I think because of the culture is dynamic, and we also have new things happening not only in Lampung or Sumatra, but also in other parts as well. We have the Go ensemble in Kalimantan, for example. They also have the new creation of the ensemble, which is used for the like the pesta, which is not like the religious and also quite sacred ritual. So because of that, I think it's also possible for me personally for us as pemuda Lampung or kesenian Lampung to create the new form of Hadrah, as long as it will pass about the legacy and also the creation, the idea of the Hadrah itself, because Hadrah can be used also as the tools to menyebarkan agama, and also to bring about the excitement about the Muslims musical arts activity in not only in Lampung, other parts, because we known as the Hadrah not only in Lampung. We have the Banyuwangi Hadrah Kuntulan, we have the Hadrah in the Banjarmasin, as long as they have the pesisir and also Melayu peradaban or maybe culture, they have also the Hadrah. So I think this one is being used for the the tools for a cultural diplomacy to spread about the Islamic movement and stuff. I think.
Thank you, Rayhan. Just in the interest of time, we have two more questions. One is from Arlene, which I'll read out, and the other is from Hashim. So I'll read out Arlene's, and then Pak Hashim, silakan yang singkat kalau bisa. And then you can answer both of them together, Rayhan, and then we'll be out of time because we're nearly out of time. So I'll read Arlene's first. Can you say anything about how much women are involved in rebana, playing in Hadrah? Arlene attended a wedding in Lampung where the women emerged from the rear to accompany the bride on rebanas. The other music at the wedding was recorded pop and talo balak performance by men. Maybe Mitch or Margaret might also be able to comment on the gender, although I think in the time, probably not, but the conference over the course of it, we'll see. So can we please then hand over to Pak Hashim for Pak Hashim, silakan menyanyikan.
Terima kasih kepada Max, kepada Rayhan ya. Ini sangat menarik karena saya kan lagi mengajarkan Hadrah itu, gurunya Bang Andi Wijaya ini dari Teluk Betung ya. Teluk Betung itu di Bandar Lampung. Tapi musiknya tadi ritmenya sama dengan, kan memang daerah pesisir ya, tapi memang seni budaya ini kan masuk dari pesisir dulu. Bagaimana mungkin bahwa di Liwa itu kan di daerah pegunungan begitu. Bagaimana mungkin hubungan stylenya tadi sama sekali gitu antara Bandar Lampung yang di daerah pesisir, kemudian pesisir laut benar berhubungan dengan laut, kemudian di daerah pegunungan di pesisir juga di daerah Liwa. Bagaimana itu kira-kira bisa diceritakan, Bang Rayhan?
Betul. Makasih Pak Hashim Khan. Saya jawab yang pertanyaan dari Ibu Alin dulu. So Alin, thank you for the interesting question because I saw a lot of footage from Margaret and also from the YouTube and stuff. There's a lot of men playing the Hadrah, but in Pesawaran village in 2015, I saw completely women playing the Hadrah and rebana. And they said that based on my memory, because it's quite a long time ago, and they said that the women usually also play Hadrah. It's also normal in the village. And also at that time, I saw a lot of men who cook and preparing refreshment for the wedding. So it's actually quite reverse that we already discovered from the archive in the past. So I think the woman involvement, I think it's also in Pesawaran, not only Liwa, as far as I know, because in the Pesawaran Regencies also, we can see a lot of women who involved in there. And yeah, so the East Lampung, yeah, the wedding you attended. So it's quite interesting to see the connection and to connect that with Pak Hashim kan. Actually, Pak, ibu saya juga dari Lampung, Pak, dari Teluk Betung ibu saya. Jadi saya ada sedikit dari Lampung, jadi ada dari Kota Bumi Metro, teman saudara saya juga. Jadi saya sempat ke Lampung dan melihat bahwa memang kebudayaan Lampung, terutama di Hadrah ini memang sangat dalam pengembangan Hadrah memang sangat luar biasa, terutama untuk menjawab pertanyaan Pak Hashim kan kenapa banyak persamaan dan seperti dari tadi di Liwa kita dengar dari recordings dari Ibu Margaret dan juga dari misalnya di Bandar Lampung dan ada di Pesawaran, koneksinya begitu terasa erat gitu. Jadi menurut saya mungkin karena ini adalah pengaruh dari budaya tadi yang selalu dinamis Pak, jadi budaya ini pun selalu bergulir dan influencing one to another, dan juga mungkin dari berbagai kesamaan-samaan tersebut ada perbedaannya sedikit dan ada variasinya sedikit gitu. Jadi apa yang tadi sudah diteliti oleh Pak Rohan Iyer, juga Ibu Margaret sudah menulis dalam penelitiannya, dan kita bisa melihat bahwa perbedaan-perbedaan tersebut justru membuat jadi semakin connection-nya semakin rich and enrich dan semakin kaya gitu Pak. Jadi melihat bahwa koneksi ini juga terbangun, dan saya lihat juga antara hubungan Hadrah antara setiap kota-kota kecil di Lampung ini pun sangat kuat karena mungkin berasal dari skala Beghak tadi, dari kebudayaan tadi yang Hindu dan Buddha tadi kita ketahui, dan apa yang Pak Hashim kan tadi bilang akulturasi dengan budaya Islam, dengan budaya Arab itu semakin kuat dan semakin menambah warna dari Hadrah di Lampung itu sendiri gitu Pak. Jadi itu yang saya ketahui saat ini Pak. Semoga menjawab.
Maaf ya Rayhan. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you Max. Thank you everyone.
Satu komentar yang mungkin sedikit aneh. I think Rayhan should be on radio. It's a nice radio voice. What do you think? I think that would be good. Thanks very much,
Thank
Rayhan.
you, Max.
So we're up to the last is Jess, and congratulations to the conference organizers, because there's consistent themes here. So from what I know of the abstract for Jess is also looking at Arabic and local indigenous influences in Hadrah and other musics. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Jess. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. I'll just share my screen. All right, I'll make this full screen. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Oh, I need to, wait, I forgot to share sound. That's important.
That's really important.
That's very important. Sound, yeah. All right, okay. Selamat siang dan selamat pagi semuanya. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Tabik pun. Thank you for attending my presentation on the cultural significance of Indonesia's. Yeah, perfect. Indonesia's. Yeah. Yapun.
Yapun.
So Indonesia's Arab influenced Islamic arts, the nuances of a distinctively local Bandar Lampung approach to Hadrah performance. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land of which I'm presenting on, and I present my respects to Indigenous elders past, present, and emerging from all lands in which we're meeting. Sovereignty has never been ceded. This is a very brief introduction to myself, just a bit about my background, but I won't go into that. Okay, so today I'll be discussing a local Lampung approach to Islamic performing arts. Despite almost a quarter of the world's Muslims living in Southeast Asia, Islamic arts are considered a blind spot in Indonesian studies. This lack of research particularly pertains to many locally adapted Islamic influenced art styles, including those with a Muslim theme and Muslim flavor, or art with secular text. I will focus on a Hadrah performance in a village on the eastern outskirts of Bandar Lampung, which actually Rayhan has actually showed as well, where the genre is interpreted in three art styles. This local interpretation and stylistic nuances of the performance typifies a uniquely Pesisir Lampung musical style, incorporating Arab, Malay, and local influences. Firstly, I'll play a section of the performer's favorite Hadrah song, Robikum Robikum, followed by a discussion of its performance, structure, and melody. Then I'll discuss how the performance includes Arab, Malay, and local stylistic nuances, typifying Lampung Pesisir culture. Lastly, I will argue that the performance represents the three styles of Islamic arts. Okay, so this song is part of the Hadrah genre, literally meaning presence in Arabic. Hadrah is an Islamic supererogatory ritual used for zikr, a communal gathering for Muslim men. And what I just learned today was actually that the word Hadrah is related to the Indonesian word hadir. The Sufi originating tradition involves a vocalist, a backing vocal, and musical instrument players, typically performed in Arabic and the local vernacular. Consisting of allegorical rituals, prayers, and song recitals, the genre is used to celebrate special Islamic festivals and rites of passage within Indonesia's Muslim communities. This performance was recorded in October 2011 on the eastern outskirts of Bandar Lampung. The song was performed by an all-male ensemble involving a vocalist with a gambus introduction, accompaniment, and interlude between each song verse. Each interlude leads to a brief interlocking, varied rhythmic episode of marawis drumming, played loudly for brief periods, then suddenly stops. The gambus and vocals have identical melodic ranges, played in a perceived Arab-sounding mode. This resembles the Western melodic minor scale on tone A. Musicians in this urban village write the Western diatonically tuned tones A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The gambus player adds an F, A sharp or D sharp tones to the basic tones above as an ornamental not to vary the melodic component of the sound. The first line of the vocalist has perceived Arabic sound in both the melody and lyrics in Arabic, which have a direct religious message. The second line of the vocalist uses mixed language, alternating between Muslim formulae in Arabic and secular text in the Lampung language. This song shows Pasisir cultural elements. Pasisir literally means coast. The long history of trade throughout the Indonesian archipelago resulted in cultural, political, and economic exchange between different spheres of influence. These exchanges were more prevalent across coastal regions of Indonesian islands, such as Kalimantan, Sulawesi, and of course Sumatra. Many Indonesian islands are considered part of the Malay world. Places in the Malay world have characteristically Malay features, including the use of the Malay language, adat, customs and values, and practicing Islam. However, there's been two main issues with this term. Firstly, it doesn't always accurately describe the political culture of many Malay regions, which may not have characteristically Malay political institutions. Secondly, while these regions use Malay for literature, administration, and religion, other languages also have the same function. For example, throughout Sumatra, Javanese, Arabic, and Malay have been used for the same purposes in some provinces. In this sense, Some areas could be simultaneously classified as belonging to the Javanese, Javanese, Malay, and Islamic worlds. In response to these cultural nuances, the term pasisir has been used to describe the culture within the peripheries of these worlds. The term pasisir describes the arts within the heterogeneous interwoven cultures across the coast of Nusantara. Rather than prescribing one particular culture, this term highlights multiple cultural influences within a pluralistic framework of common culture from trade interactions. Islam is generally widespread along these coasts, with the notable exception of Bali, but the classification of pasisir is not exclusively Islamic. So focusing back on Lampung, being a peripheral region of Malay, Javanese, and Arab cultures, arts from the coast of Lampung are part of the pasisir sphere of influence. The performers of Robikum Robikum are part of Lampung's coastal ethno-linguistic group, Ulun Lampung Sampai, using an outside traders approach to the Hadrah genre. Likewise, the performance of Robikum Robikum shows identifiable Malay, Arab, and local influences within a pasisir matrix. The most visually identifiable Malay influence is in clothing. The performance wear a characteristic Malay cultural dress, baju Melayu, consisting of a pink satin tunic, as well as purple and gold samping, a sarong worn around the waist. Baju Melayu is a traditional Malay men's clothing has been a traditional Malay men's clothing for centuries, usually worn for formal occasions such as Friday prayers. Wearing this cultural dress to perform Hadrah shows Malay influence in Lampung's pasisir culture. The Arab influence can be seen in the use of gumbus. The gumbus is a wooden pear-shaped fretless double-course plucked lute of assumed Arab origin, resembling the Yemeni gumbus. It has been used to invoke an Arab flavor, employing 7 tone modes alongside a major and minor modes, which may include a raised or lowered 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and/or 7th, and raised 4th. The gumbus used in the performance is an Arab-style broad-bellied gumbus, rather than a more commonly Lampungese narrow-bellied gumbus. This is another gumbus, also in Sumatra. Well, in other parts of Nusantara, such as in Sarawak, the style of gumbus is visibly different. And I'll be talking about local adaptation. And though Marawas is also of Arab origin, Argot shows local adaptation. Marawas drums are small double-headed high-pitched drums made of 2 skins of about 12 to 20 centimeters in diameter. Its use in accompanying gumbus is a local stylistic nuance, as frame drums are more commonly used to accompany gumbus in Sumatra outside Riau. This use is similar to how Maras drums are used to accompany kanbus in Yemen. Additionally, even within Lampung, the musicians take a rare approach to playing Marawis, involving 2 to 4 interlocking drums in a virtuoso style, focusing on sudden changes of dynamics and tempo. Islamic arts, such as music and dance, were one of the methods used to spread Islam across Nusantara. These art styles were localized, containing influences from other cultures on their roots to different regions. Arts within the periphery of Islam can be classified into 3 categories, as Rohan has mentioned before. So first we've got Kesenian Islami, or art with a Muslim style, which includes musical performances with a religious or moral text, usually sung in Arabic or Malay. Its melodies have a Middle Eastern sound based on an Arab-style heptatonic scale, or its lower or higher tetrachord, connotating to the religious purity of the Arab center of Islam. Kesenian yang bernafaskan Islam, or art that breathes with Muslim flavor, have secular themes, often about love or politics, but follow Muslim formulae at the beginning or end of performances, such as the confession of faith or the phrase Assalamu alaikum. These arts invoke a social imagination of the Arabian Peninsula and the culture in which Islam originated. And lastly, Kesenian, or art itself, focuses on the secular text of these performances. The performance Robikum Robikum is a unique example of how Hadrah genre may be interpreted in all three above-mentioned styles. Hadrah is seen as a genre with an Islamic theme through its direct conveyance of religious messages in Arabic and use for zikr. The performance was in an Arab-sounding mode, resembling the Western melodic minor scale on tone A. This use of a Middle Eastern sound carries a level of religious prestige, creating an aura of the Arabian center of Islam.
Yes, Marv Mangangu, if you can in about 5 minutes or even less, if you can, would be great to finish.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Okay. Next, Islam, the performance can be seen as having an Islamic flavor through its use of gumbus. Most gumbus have secular themes, yet it's consumed in Islamic settings throughout Indonesia due to its Arab sound and use of the Arabic language. While generally secular, the Muslim formulae and Arab elements of gumbus music means to be seen as a genre with an Islamic flavor. Moreover, the performance contained themes with secular text in the local vernacular, but religious text in Arabic. The art of this performance can be found in its secular elements. The text has secular themes as seen in lyrics in the second verse, but also its stylistic nuances show art in itself, as mentioned here. So in conclusion, the identifiable Malay, Arab, and local stylistic nuances, which came about from a history of trade with cultural exchanges, culminate to create a uniquely Pasisir Lampung musical style. The Hadrah genre is Arab sound, Islamic formulae, mixed text theme and language use, with local stylistic nuances, through the context of being part of Islamic devotion, allowed this performance to represent all three styles of Islamic arts. Ultimately, these elements typify both an outside island's traders' approach to Islamic arts and a uniquely Pasisir Lampung musical style. In accordance to Indonesian customs, I apologize if anything was not entirely correct. Thank you for listening. Terima kasih atas perhatiannya.
Thank you very much, Jess. Now there's a few minutes and there's a question from Hashim, but just before that, can I remind people to please send a message through chat if you'd like to ask a question, and there's quite a few here who I'm sure are brimming over with excellent ideas and questions who haven't yet. So jangan malu, please don't be shy, put your question forward. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes to finish the session, and we'll start with Pak Hashim. Silakan, Pak.
Ya, terima kasih kepada moderator. Ini menarik sekali, saya juga mendukung ya. Tadi pembicaranya oleh Jesse ya. Baik, sebenarnya yang diterangkan hari ini kan sebenarnya kalau saya lihat itu karena dalam bahasa Inggris saya nggak begitu paham ya. Tapi yang saya lihat bahwa ada 2 unsur seni budaya yang terangkum di sini saya lihat. Yang pertama adalah hadrah itu sendiri, yang itu yang dijelaskan oleh saudara Jesse mengenai apa namanya tentang foto-foto yang ada rebana ya. Hadrah itu sebenarnya berfungsi untuk ngarak, jadi lebih ke menyambut para tamu dan lain sebagainya. Kemudian kalau di Lampung semacam itu, tapi di hadrah di Islam sendiri sebenarnya lebih banyak ke hiburan ya. Nah, tapi di hadrah di Lampung umumnya tidak menggunakan karena fungsinya untuk ngarak tamu, jadi tidak menggunakan gitar gambus ya, gitu. Jadi karena dia fungsinya untuk jadi semacam ini acara itu kan di luar, terus kemudian nyambut tamu agung sambil jalan, nah itu ngarak yaitu musiknya hadrah itu di Lampung. Kemudian yang tadi kalau tadi kan penyanyinya itu sendiri Mina ya, di situ ada Bang Andi Wijaya yang dari Teluk Betung dan juga menggunakan hiburan menggunakan gambus, itu disebut tadi dilihat ada syairnya tari bedana. Robikum selalu sikam tari bedana, ada tari bedananya. Jadi tari bedana sebenarnya fungsinya bukan untuk ngarak. Jadi ketika tamu mereka datang, ke suatu pesta, disambut ngarak, kemudian hiburan. Nah, hiburan inilah dari tari bedana tadi menggunakan tabuhan itu. Jadi bagus sekali menurut saya mendukung sekali. Tapi memang ternyata di sini saya melihat ada dua unsur seni yang dijadikan satu, ya. Tapi yang diterangkan di sini videonya adalah video tari bedana, tapi foto-fotonya ada ngaraknya. Itu bagaimana, Jesse? Kira-kira. Terima kasih.
I'll respond back in English. That's or just to clarify. So you're asking about in the there was something in the video. There was something different to what was in the photo, but I didn't quite pick up what was the contradiction.
Bisa menjelaskan dengan singkat saja pertanyaannya, Pak Hashim. Perbedaan gambar dan musik, tapi pertanyaannya sedang di-mute, Pak.
Pertanyaannya adalah bahwa hadrah itu berfungsi untuk ngarak, ya, tapi juga untuk hiburan. Tapi kalau tari bedana itu khusus untuk hiburan. Nah, di dalam hal ini bahwa tadi disebutkan judulnya ada hadrah dan sebagainya, tapi sebenarnya videonya menerangkan tentang tari bedana. Kalau beda berarti beda fungsi, beda letak. Jadi kalau hadrah umumnya digunakan untuk ngarak, untuk menyambut tamu, tapi ada juga kalau di Islam itu untuk hiburan, tapi kalau tari bedana khusus untuk hiburan, tidak untuk ngarak, untuk hiburan. Nah, dalam hal ini apa perbedaannya di sini maksud saya? Karena ini sebenarnya ada dua kesenian yang dijadikan satu kalau saya lihat begitu.
Sudah jelas, Jess?
So it's like tari but rebana is more for like entertainment rather than being part of Islamic devotion. Is that, if I'm not mistaken? Is that
part of welcoming guests? I think he was saying.
Yeah. And the question is, why is it?
I think Pak Hashim, maaf karena waktunya kurang ada. We can continue that, but we're nearly out of time. And there is one other question from Megan Collins. Mantap presentasinya, menarik sekali. No, mau berangkat aja. So I think with Pak Hashim's question in mind, I just want to invite the three speakers to de-mute themselves, because I think you all have some interesting things in common. Maybe you can start with you, Jess, if you like, because you've had the least time for questions. I'm just interested in the three of you, how you see each other's work interact. Perhaps relate that back to Hashim's question about the different forms. I invite you to do it. You don't have to, but I think that's something that would be good. So Rayhan, are you there? And Rohan, you're there?
Yes, I'm here.
Silakan, the three of you just have a chat and we listen.
So, I mean, one of the things I first thought of when I heard Rayhan present about Hadrah is how much more melodic the rhythms of the drums sounded. You know, like I could kind of, like compared to what I was analyzing, which was very dense and rich in texture. When I was listening to the frame drumming of Rayhan's examples, it sounded a little more sparser, like there was more interweaving between the singing and the actions as well. I mean, that was one of my observations. What did you two think?
Yeah, for me, thanks, Rohan. And I think for the part of Hadrah itself, I think the connection between the like Jesse already explained about the Arabic scale and also with the melodic scale, I think it's just having the strong connection with the Arabic influence, such as Pak Hashim can also already mentioned about the acculturation between the Lampung, which is from the Hindu and Buddhist, and then with the Islamic influence from the Arabic, which just makes more unique, I think, compared to the other Hadrah in some part of the Indonesia as well, such as we know in Banyuwangi as a kuntulan Hadrah, and also in the Banjarmasin they also have kind of rebana, but I think it's just particular mixture blended between these two regions within Lampung and also Arabic, which just makes more unique. I think it's just perfect for me. What do you think, Jess, about this?
Yeah, I think the thing is, I think there's a lot of layers in it. I think that's the main thing. You mentioned there's a base of Hindu Buddhist culture, and then you've also got almost like a contradiction with practicing Islam, but also got these traditions which come from another religion. And then on top of that, you've got layers from even within Sumatra, you've got influences from Javanese culture, which I didn't talk about. But there's also influences from Malay cultures and Arab cultures, and I think, but then you also got the local indigenous cultures as well, and then it becomes something unique when it's all together.
Great, thanks, Jess. I think that's a nice segue. And maaf Pak Hashim, if pertanyaan masih belum dijawab dengan penuh, but thank you to Rayhan. You've given a nice English summary there of the question, so that's something to continue. No, maaf Pak, waktunya sudah lewat dan mau makan siang, and we only have half an hour to eat, I think, as far as I understand the schedule. So maaf Pak Hashim, but there's more time in the continuing sessions. Margaret, do you want to say anything to wrap up?
Sedikit bahwa tadi seni budayanya hanya itu 2 seni budaya, satu hadrah, satu tari bedana, itu aja simpulannya.
Oke, terima kasih.
Penelitian lebih lanjut. Gitu.
Ya. Bu Margaret, do you want to say anything?
Selamat makan, waktunya sempit. Terima kasih atas semua contribution.
Sama-sama. Aipun.
Recording stopped.
Terima kasih semua. Selamat makan.
Selamat makan ya.
Selamat makan. Terima kasih. Selamat siang.
Rayhan nama ganteng aja.
Woi, gantengan belilah.
Kaset Nia. Kaset pisang.
Apa sih? Ada apa ya?
Ada Ibuki.
Ada bidadari ini, bidadari.
Lady Pus.
Ada Tuan Putri hadir.
Habis ini Pak Wayan.
Mantap. Ini jam berapa nih Pak? Habis ini Pak, mulainya?
Pak Wayan.
Jam berapa?
10 menit istirahat.
Oh, oke. Wah, mantap ini.
Ya, sorry ya, saya dalam hal ini ada di MPBKL ya. Tapi saya yakin semua bahagia. Semua sehat.
Bagus semua. Bagus. Semua kita berada.
Ya.
Good.
Pak TPMPS bagaimana?
Woi, mantap itu.
Siap Pak Brodi.
Nadira, apa kabar Nadira?
Baik Mas.
Di mana sekarang? Posisinya di mana?
Saya masih di Lampung. Mas lagi di mana nih Mas?
Lagi di Jawa ini.
Oh lagi lanjutkan studinya ya Mas ya?
Iya.
Nadira
ini ya Mas.
Terima kasih.
Kalau saya benar-benar ke Monash ini saya.
Di Monash ya Bu.
Duh, Nadira sayang kapan bisa ketemu
Sifatnya Ibu ya.
Mana fotonya dong?
Kita bisa makan bersama sama Nadira nih sama.
Nanti Pak Wayan nanti jadi tuan rumah next nih.
MPBKL.
Di
MPBKL. Abis ini ada pertemuan Pak Hasim ini panitia kok nggak pernah ketemu.
Lewat SK aja nanti. Panitianya lewat SK aja nanti.
Panitia harus ketemu. Makan bersama.
Itu ketua senat rumah adatnya itu.
Ya, tapi evaluasi di sana. evaluasi di sana aja nanti.
Iya, harus live dong rumah adatnya. Ada pisaan, ada gamelan,
Iya, sakti, gamelan,
gitu
sakti, Haji Ripin. Ini kok nggak ditutup oleh ibunda kita? Mana Ibu Margaret ini?
Enggak, udah tutup. Ini istirahat, rehat, makan mereka. Siang di sana. Di sana itu jam 1 udah kelaparan mereka.
Oh gitu.
Iya, beda 4 jam, Yunda. Beda 4 jam.
Kalau gitu kita juga maunya ikut ya.
Ya kalau kita kan jam 9 di sini.
Harusnya Pak Hasim nyiapin makan juga buat kita dari Indonesia.
Jam sekarang. Nanti saya kirim snack ini.
Pak Hasim ini.
Ya Bunda ya, Mami ya. Harusnya nyiapin ya.
Harusnya disiapin.
Iya.
Ini udah disiapin kayaknya di depan masing-masing.
Dia kan dia kan panitia dari Indonesia.
Udah disiapin di depan itu. Udah ada kayaknya itu.
Baiklah, aku izin ya.
Siap, alhamdulillah bisa ikut.